I've got a question for you. Has living tiny ever crossed your mind? Have you watched these videos about tiny houses? Is it a possibility that you've pondered for yourself? I had to ask myself this question before moving into a tiny 2x5 metre cabin. And if the tiny lifestyle is something that you've been pondering, stay tuned and we will go into all of the good stuff about paring down and living tiny. For a long time, I toyed with the idea of tiny living. It's become quite a phenomenon in the last few years. After having lived in normal houses and apartments my whole life, I really like the idea of downsizing, minimizing, and I just love the cute little tiny homes, little houses in miniature. So when I moved from Wellington back to my hometown, I ended up getting a job at a showgrounds where I had the opportunity to bring a cabin onto the grounds to live full time. And I thought, what a perfect way to figure out if it's the kind of lifestyle for me. So I'm just renting my cabin, and it isn't a tiny house, it is a cabin. It doesn't have a separate bathroom or a mezzanine bedroom or that kind of thing. It's just one room, but I absolutely love it. And I'm going to tell you why. I don't think I could go back to living in a normal house. I think it would take a lot for me to want to do that. I've been living here for 2.5 years nearly in a one room cabin, 2x5 meters. It's taught me that one does not need much to be happy. It's not for everyone, but I have always thought of myself as a bit of a greenie, a bit of a, not so much a minimalist, but I've never been one to subscribe to the idea of having to own my own property or get the newest, latest everything. You often see people in their houses and they've got every room in their garden filled with stuff that they don't use, rooms that they don't go into. It just doesn't make sense to me. When you live tiny, you begin to appreciate the little things and what really matters. You begin to discover just how little you need to survive and to truly thrive. And I don't think I've ever been happier as far as my living situation. I grew up in normal houses. I lived in an apartment in Wellington, paying phenomenal rent. And I just loved when I started coming across these tiny houses that people were building. I just thought, oh, that's for me. As I say, this isn't a tiny house, but it's a step towards that lifestyle, and it's really given me the opportunity to delve into, what it really means to live tiny. As I say, not everyone could do it. So I moved back to my hometown 3 years ago to be closer to family. My daughter was growing. She's got her own family now. And I got a job at a showgrounds here in New Zealand. We have, I don't know what you would call them in other places in the world. It's not a fairground. It's generally where it's an agricultural and pastoral showgrounds. So we have a lot of equine events and people showed their livestock and farming machinery, and we have like the AMP show and things like that, and it's a beautiful, beautiful ground. So I got a job here, and originally before lockdown happened, we have motorhomers and caravans that stay here. I became the motorhome manager, that side of things, and originally we were thinking of converting one of the buildings on site for me to live in full time. And then COVID hit and knocked out all of our income and events and things like that. When I moved back over here from Wellington, I was lucky enough to have a friend who lived just out of town in the country who had kind of half of a house that they weren't really using. But I wasn't happy being in someone else's home. It's lovely that I had the opportunity to stay there. But I used to bike into work past this place that was building these little cabins, and they looked so cool. And I will show you properly. I've given a sneak peek, but I will show you around properly. And I just thought, oh, they're going to be so expensive, I didn't even think of it. So I started looking into, could I bring a caravan here to stay in? And I was looking at renting a caravan, and they were really expensive, and they were really old, cold, uninsulated, 70s, 80s caravans. So one day I just decided to stop into this place. These cabins they're so rustic and beautiful. And it turned out that renting one of these cabins was going to cost less than renting a horrible old caravan. There started the bug of, I can actually take a step towards this tiny living lifestyle without having to, come up with money to build one or plan one yet, just to see if it is something that I would like to move forward with properly. And I have decided after 2.5 years that I still, I'd like to build my own. And that is what I will do. But in the meantime, I'm very lucky because I get to live here for free. Other than the rent of the cabin, I don't pay anything to stay here. Obviously, if I owned my own, I wouldn't have to pay for that either. But I don't pay for my power. I don't pay for anything to stay here. And I only have to work 20 hours a week in order to sustain this lifestyle. And I have twice as much money in my hand at the end of a week as I did working full-time and living in Wellington. The lifestyle is, who wouldn't want that? Who wouldn't want to give up half of their 40-hour week? So I had already pared down. I was living in a 2-bedroom apartment, bringing up my daughter in Wellington. When I moved from that apartment, you couldn't get anything for less than $650 to rent in Wellington. There's a housing shortage in New Zealand, and I had never in my life seen the likes of not being able to find somewhere to live. I had family back over in my hometown. My brother's here. My mother, who's in her, winter years, shall we say. I took it as an opportunity to come back and spend more time helping her and just being nearer. And I had already begun to pare down, because you accumulate stuff, don't you? You just accumulate crap. So I had already done quite a lot of downsizing of stuff. I'm not a minimalist, but I don't really like to have a lot of just stuff that I don't use. I do subscribe to that kind of keep only what you use and love. So I'd already started to pare down things. And then when I moved out of that apartment and back over here into my friend's house, I was only living in, I had 2 rooms, a hallway and a bathroom. And so that was kind of, probably about quarter the size of the apartment that I was in Wellington. So I had to pare down for that. So I'd already semi-prepared for that. So then moving here, I was easily able to just pare down even more. And luckily there's also a shed here that I can use for storage, to store some of my stuff, like things like store away my winter clothes in summer, and just the things that I don't need all the time but I can just access easily. So I'm very lucky that I have that here as well for free. I'm not fully self-contained. I don't have a bathroom. I'm not plumbed. I don't have any plumbing. I don't have any hot water. We'll go into this later. Yeah, it took me a morning to move everything in. I think it only took one trip. I bought a futon bed that folds into a couch and down into a bed second hand. I did buy a brand new mini fridge. I bought a brand new chemical toilet. I bought a hob and a bench top oven, water tank, things like that. So yeah, after settling in with all of my stuff and after having lived here and experienced tiny living for 2.5 years, I've got to say that if you're someone who has even just had a tiny inkling about the idea of living tiny, I would suggest looking into it. There are often ways of trying it out without having to purchase your own or build your own initially. I love it. I absolutely love it. As I say, I don't think I would be happy to go back to normal living. I like that it forces you to have to be very careful and very aware of your resources, how much stuff you have, how much resources you use, even right down to water and things like that. And on my channel, I'd quite like to just bring you along with me on some of my journeys and show you the lifestyle, and really hope that you enjoyed listening. And we'll see you next time. Ta-da!